Okay, if you're still here, bearing with me, great. If you're just tuning in and you're just coming across this particular segment of this little video series that I'm doing here, then please watch the prior videos first, because you have to keep in mind that if you take this kind of thing out of context, you'll miss the larger picture, essentially. So I'm just, appealing to common sense. So this is an essay by Richard Moore, which I felt worth disseminating almost in its entirety in this series of videos that I'm doing here. So moving on, globalization and world government. The essential bond between capitalism and nationalism was broken in 1945, but it took some time for the elite planners to recognize this new condition and to begin bringing the world system into alignment with it. The strong Western nation state had been the bulwark of capitalism for centuries, and initial post-war policies were based on the assumption that this world would continue indefinitely. The Bretton Woods financial system, in other words, the IMF, World Bank, and a system of fixed exchange rates amongst major currencies, was set up to stabilize national economies, and popular prosperity was encouraged to some degree to provide for political stability in those nation states. Neoliberalism in the US and in Britain represented the first serious break with this policy framework and brought the first visible signs of the friction, I should say, of the nation-capital bond. The neoliberal project, sometimes in terms of foreign policy it's called neocon, but it's all the same thing, okay? Neoliberal project was economically profitable in the US and Britain, and the public accepted the matrix economic mythology. Meanwhile, the integrated global economy gave rise to a new generation of transnational corporations, and corporate leaders began to realize that corporate growth was not dependent on strong core nation states. Indeed, Western nations, with their environmental laws, consumer protection measures, and other forms of regulatory interference, were a burden to corporate growth. Having been successfully field tested in two of the oldest democracies, one of them being Greece, the neoliberal project moved on to the global stage. The Bretton Woods system of fixed rates of currency exchange was weakened, and the international financial system became destabilizing instead of stabilizing for national economies. The radical, the radical free trade project was launched, leading eventually to the World Trade Organization. The vision that had begun in 1945 was finally manifesting as an explosive change in the world system. The objective of neoliberal free trade treaties is to remove all political controls over domestic and international trade and commerce. Corporations have free rein to maximize profits, heedless of environmental consequences, safety risks, and so on. Instead of governments regulating corporations, the WTO now sets the rules for governments, telling them what kind of beef they must import, whether or not they can ban asbestos, and what additives they must permit or not permit in their petroleum products. So far, in every case where the WTO has been asked to review a health, safe, or environmental regulation, the regulation has been overturned. Most of the world has been turned into a periphery. The imperial core has been boiled down to the capitalist elites themselves, represented by their bureaucratic, unrepresentative WTO government. WTO. The burden of accelerated imperialism falls hardest, of course, for those outside the West, where loans are used as a lever by the IMF, International Monetary Fund, to compel debtor nations such as Rwanda or South Korea to accept suicidal reform packages. In the 1800s, genocide was employed to clear North America and Australia of their native populations, creating room for growth. Today, a similar program of genocide has apparently been unleashed against sub-Saharan Africa and many other nations. The IMF destroys the economies, the CIA trains the militias and stirs up tribal conflicts, and the West sells weapons to all of them, all sides. Famine and genocidal civil wars are the predictable and inevitable result of this. As in the past, Western military force will be required to control the non-Western peripheries and make adjustments to local political arrangements when considered necessary by the elite planners. The Pentagon continues to provide the primary policing power, with NATO playing an ever-increasing role. Resentment against the West and against neoliberalism is growing in the Third World. And the frequency of military interventions is bound to increase. All of this needs to be made acceptable to Western minds, adding a few new dimensions to the matrix. So, upcoming, here are the new dimensions for the matrix. Next part.